welcome to a nice and peaceful morning coffee time. Not even that cold though. I did have to put the fly on last night because I was starting to get dew coming down. Don't think I have enough tree cover. I have been swapping fuel canisters early for most of this trip, just leaving the old one in, the hiker box or wherever, handing it off to somebody. This time I carried both because I thought I could get a couple of more days off it, but nah, this basically means it's empty. Part of what I hate about the established, accessible, busy sites is the bathroom practices it exposes you to. Here I am bushwhacking away from the water to dig a proper cat hole and crossed by the creek, and somebody literally dug a cat hole, left toilet paper on the surface like less than a foot from the stream bed. So today should give me an idea about how this next section is going to go. I'm only trying for 15 miles a day per my plan, though the days are getting really, really short, and noticeably shorter every day it seems like out here. The clouds came in while I was drinking my coffee. I actually had the fly off until about midnight, and then I got up to pee and I noticed the outside of my sleeping bag was damp, so I decided to throw on the fly. It makes it a lot easier to manage moisture if the moisture from dew, etc. is all on, just one part of the tent I can pack away separately. I wish I could say there was a good way to tell if I was going to need the fly on or not. But honestly, it's reading tea leaves most of the time. Obviously, if there's a chance of rain, even a small chance, I usually put it on because I've been woken up multiple times by having rain hit the mesh. And it really sucks when you have some sort of a microburst and it goes from clear to just pouring on you while you're scrambling around half awake, trying to figure out where the fly is, get it on the tent, etc. There are things like dew point temperature, but here's the thing, like if I'm under a tree, it might be wet all around, but blocked by the tree. Also, if clouds come in, all of a sudden everything gets wet because there's just, moisture coming horizontally through the air. So when in doubt, I put the fly on. Downside of having the fly on is, of course, it kind of seals you away. And I've noticed that particularly people who have a lot of anxiety about camping, being hidden away like that has a tendency to make that anxiety worse, if anything. That rabbit or whatever running around right outside tends to sound a lot bigger if you can't see out there. And also, of course, the other source of moisture is from inside of the tent. When you are using body heat to dry out clothes, when you are exhaling, you exhale into a plastic bag for a little while, the inside will be wet. So the way to fix that almost all the time, except when you're in the clouds, is of course ventilation, and buttoning up a rain fly all the way to the ground is one of those common mistakes I see in the wilderness class. And it's usually people who are just so worried about being cold, often because they have a cheap or insufficient sleeping bag. So they button that up, and then, the inside of the tent can be covered in frost pretty easily when you're up in the, high Sierra Mountains, even in the middle of the summer. When I came through that wilderness class in 2008, there was somebody who liked at snow camp to go around and shake the tents of people during the wake-up call, because they did not at the time advocate ventilating the four-season tents real well, and people always had frost on top. So, you're snow camping and you shake the tent first thing in the morning, it snows inside. It is an effective way to wake people, but not the nicest. I went pretty quick over just a couple of years from taking the class to running amok all over the place to basically starting my own group where I could set a lot of what we teach. And there were a number of things that I either emphasized differently or included that hadn't been, or things like, bear hangs that used to be on the curriculum. And I'm like, no, other than saying do not do this, it's not ethical. I hate teaching this. So as far as this particular challenge, I did run into somebody yesterday who was just out for a couple of days. They'd gone up into one of the bulbs in Georgia and back. They said the trail was in good shape based on how many side streams, not counting the big river, were running yesterday. I am feeling pretty good about water availability. It does look like there might be a 9-ish mile thing today where there's probably no water sources. So in about 2 miles, I'm going to probably fill up my big bottle, and then I should be able to make it to another pretty guaranteed source before the end of the day. So far, the trail has been obviously maintained. You see all the sod trees and everything. I don't know if that is a Bartram thing though, or if that is like the Chachuga River Trail, since I think they are both overlapping in this section. I did see a couple of references to brushy bits when I looked on the Facebook group, but the thing is, people's definition of brushy bits can vary quite a bit. I mean, I could say like Black Cone on the Condor Trail was a little bit brushy. And then you get some, AT through hiker who they go to the PCT and they can't walk with their hands completely out at their sides without touching leaves. And they're like, this is unacceptably brushy. At least so far, the only thing is I really hate when you have to duck under branches. I can always get my head under, but my pack gets stuck, and I hate having to take my pack off and drag it under and all of that. So I will usually bushwhack and do some extreme things to go over if at all possible, but there were a handful of things yesterday where I was crawling. I am not complaining though. The weather out here has been impeccable considering that it is now early November. In 3 days, it is not going to be in the 60s anymore. It's going to go down to the 40s and it'll be below freezing at night for a couple of days. But I was kind of expecting that weather in a sustained fashion out here. When I was on the long trail in the Bent Mackay, I was making FarOut water comments pretty much constantly. And I've had multiple people message me saying thanks. They were behind me by a couple of days and it was a huge help. Then when I got to the Foothills Trail, there was so much water. I basically only made, 10 comments for the entire thing. This one, I had intended to kind of make waypoints for all the water availability. And I still am, though I'm starting to feel a little silly. I mean, obviously this river off to my left, that's flowing. But there have been so many of these little side creeks flowing. I'm going to keep it up because I was looking for that information and I was not able to find a publicly available set of waypoints. I had somebody who emailed me a document with notes made off of YouTube videos and one of those trail journals from years ago. Yeah, we'll see. I'd actually tried to get a hold of somebody associated with the Bartram Trail to see if they had a set of official waypoints kind of working towards getting added to FarOut or something like that. But like I said yesterday, I didn't have any luck. There were some comments on the Facebook group of a few people reaching out and the FarOut folks saying they had requests for it, but it wasn't currently on their roadmap as far as new guides they were working on. I've never figured out quite what their standards are because sometimes there are things where it's just like, here's a bunch of day hiking trails in the area. There is a pretty extensive set around Australia, for example. When I bought the Bibbleman, I also had the option for like a $56 pack that included everything in Australia and New Zealand except for the Te Aurora. I did talk to somebody on the international AT and I actually helped gather waypoints for Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia. I think those have since been published. And there might even be some of my pictures in those packs. I gave the guy permission. So I know it's actually a case where the FarOut company doesn't source the data. It's some outside group they partner with, and presumably there is some sort of profit share in between them. But I've yet to find out what the actual kind of like standards agreement and numbers are. I have seen FarOut guides that have some quirks, some less than great data here and there, but overall, of all the various applications I've tried, Hiker, et cetera, it is the best solution out there. AllTrails, Hiker, and a handful of others out there all seem to have limitations. And in a lot of cases, like AllTrails, it's aimed at dinky short day hikes that are just for kind of public consumption. That is the most common app we find people coming in using at the wilderness class. The big thing there is the trails are often incomplete. It's just somebody recorded something and put it up there. So there's this whole trail network, all these cool hikes, and people are just doing the first 7 miles because, that's all AllTrails showed. And they assume if it's not on AllTrails, you must not be supposed to be back there or something. Or the classic one where I was leading the wilderness class outing to Joshua Tree, where we strap helmets on folks and we scramble up this third class peak. Lots of fun. And partway through, we ran into this couple who seemed quite a bit out of their depth and actively accelerating into a loud domestic dispute. And the guy was convinced that they were about to get to a trail because he had it on this app called AllTrails and it showed it on there. And I happened to look it up later, and the source track actually came from somebody from the wilderness class in one of the other areas, and they had uploaded it there, and there wasn't any indication that, hey, you are going to be doing high second, low third class if you want to do this. It is not a, trail like this. Think like those couple of moves on Katahdin that usually stop people, where you got to do like the foot hook on the rebar and whatnot. I would love to see some sort of option that was a little more crowdsourced. The problem a lot of them have is garbage data. See the AllTrails thing. But something that would allow kind of a central contribution, so you could get some of these little lesser known trails like the San Diego Trans-County Trail, where the official map set is basically something you download off of a Facebook group. And you do get people making, like when I did the Theodore Solomon, somebody had made an Avenza map set. That is something that I guess the Forest Service has kind of been pushing these last couple of years. It is PDF printed maps which have a geolocation data on them, so you can basically show where you are. They do have some advantages. For example, if you look at like the Grand Enchantment maps on that, they have some additional notation which doesn't come through on the Gaia map sets as well. And fair enough, I don't really like those that much, and my biases come from, when I started, paper maps were still very much the norm. And paper maps are fine if you're going out for the weekend and you're doing 30 miles. When you start doing distances, I think the old PCT for purchase printed map set was like 90 sheets or something like that. Jen actually bought it, I believe, when she initially looked at doing the PCT after college. But that is just ridiculously wasteful. Same thing with printed guidebooks. I mean, way too heavy and way too much information I don't really need. Anytime there's a trail like the Hot Spring Trail where the only data source is a printed guide, that just means I have to buy the guide and spend a bunch of time converting it into a sane person CalTopo or something like that. Trail magic, I guess. One of Jen and I's long-standing disagreements has to do with phone app navigation. She uses this old app that I was using 10 plus years ago called Topo Maps, which is a one-time purchase and basically shows you the old USGS quads with a location, and you can set waypoints. It doesn't let you do tracks and some other things. So we're always disagreeing on what to show students in the class, because I want to teach them about making tracks, using tracks, loading tracks, things like that, because I think that's a core skill set. And plus, the USGS quads are often not the best layer to be using. Unfortunately, all the alternatives that use something else are basically subscription at this point. And I think that actually has to do with traffic on the mapping layers. So if it is available, I will always use the FarOut guide. That's what I've been doing so far on the various trails of this trip. If there's no FarOut, I will get a GPX, annotate it up, and load that into Gaia. And then if there is an Avenza map set or similar, I'll often carry those as a backup, because like I think I talked about a week or two ago, I don't feel like paper map and compass is necessary to carry. I do, however, need at least a software hardware backup. So I have the inReach in case my phone gets lost or my phone fails. You know, it wouldn't be pleasant, but I could figure something out. And then if there is a FarOut or Gaia issue, I generally have CalTopo, Avenza, or something like that with a backup map I can use. Though honestly, the worst I've really hit with all my miles using FarOut is occasionally if I'm trying to sync comments when I don't have reliable internet. I've run into issues. I also play amateur tech support quite a bit for people I run into. And most common issue, like last guy I ran into on the Foothill Trail, he hadn't actually downloaded the map layer. The application prompted him and everything, but he had just looked at it offline. So he had a line, he had waypoints, he had no map when he was offline. I guess I have occasionally seen where FarOut is messing up on the GPS location, like where you are located. That is mostly going to be more phone-based, and I have pretty much always seen that resolve instantly with a reboot of the phone, which is something people, including myself, neglect to do. I was in enterprise content management for 10 plus years, and those big servers were rebooted quite a bit. You know, it used to be I shut my computer down every day, and then somewhere along the way, we now have uptime lasting weeks or months between a reset. Now that's a more fun bridge. Well, damn, this might be the only water for about 9 or 10 miles. I may have to backtrack here to the campsite. Can't just get down this hillside. Seem to be having some unfortunate stomach setbacks this morning, but sometimes that can happen around town food. I'm not usually eating, multiple potatoes and pork chops like I was back at that B&B. I think it was the Condor Trail where my stomach just had a hell of a time for like the first 4 or 5 days before things finally settled down and got normal. Also on the AT, during those little deli stops where I could run in and get like soda, Gatorade, and a cheeseburger, I had so many panicked runs back into the woods after that. This is one of the multiple reasons I have never been a big fan of the whole like trying to minimize the amount of toilet paper you have out. Oh. Huh. So as I was saying, that's why I'm not a huge fan of the things I've seen where people try and super minimize the amount of toilet paper that they have out here. I use wipes like many folks who have been out a lot. It helps with chafing and some other things. And I usually just bring way more than I'm probably going to need on any given section, because sometimes that really helps. I don't even know what sort of tool you need to do that, because all that lettering looked carved pretty regularly. Getting close to having views. It is a really pretty day with all the leaves coming down when the wind's going. I just can't seem to hit a real steady pace. Stomach's still bothering me, and I've had to run off into the woods a couple of times. I am still not feeling great. A little worse, if anything, and there's this kind of weird hollow feeling to the pain in my stomach, which reminds me of the stuff earlier this year, and I'm just admittedly a little gun-shy when it comes to anything adjacent to that. So not in panic mode or anything, but I think what I'm going to do is get to the end of this dry section, fill up, and then stop a little early rather than worrying about doing my miles. See, this is what I get for taking the zero. Feels like every time I take non-emergency time off, I end up regretting it soon after when other stuff crops up. So this is odd. Okay, well, I guess this will work for my night water. It's at least above the road. Well, I'd kind of hoped to be in camp by now, but oh well. I am filled up for the night and just trying to find something suitably far enough from the road. Never a campsite when you need it. Well, I'm just not getting my little private campsites on this trip, I guess, or on this trail. I guess this will do, though. It's about that time. Trail's on the other side of the creek. So, not the best day. But hey, one good day, one day. See how it shakes out tomorrow. Things haven't gotten any worse for a little while, so I'll take that as a plus. I'm just gonna force some dinner down and then hope things look better in the morning. And I mean, they often do, or at least more manageable. At this point, I'm kind of figuring I'll do the pushback schedule and get to Franklin on Monday night instead of Sunday night. That is during the cold snap. Not that it matters, other than I kind of wanted to be out here for that because it's kind of nice being all cozy in the sleeping bag when things are chilly, but oh well. Like I said, just take it a day at a time. Home sweet home.